Okay, so do we, I forgot, Sarah, do we normally start with the roll call, or are we going to do that?
Yeah, I've been checking people off as they come in. So far I see we have Jay Collins. I do not see Danny for the city, but I do see Melanie.
Danny's here.
Oh, Danny's here. Okay, great. I see Mark Hudson. Melanie, are you here for Jonathan Scott's seat?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. Is Nicole McCleary here? Nope. Tony Garcia is here. We have Jeff Sims here as well.
Yes.
Mike Williams. Gina Evans is here.
Yes.
I see Leland, as well as Anna. Matthew Pleasant I do not see him. He's supposed to be here for the school board. I do not see Troy for Temple Terrace. We have both Chris and Brian with T-Barda. I do not see Mike Williams, or not, I mean, sorry, not Mike Williams, Mike English. And then Rachel Chase is here. All right, so you can go ahead and
okay.
Start.
I guess we'll get started. I'll just throw this out there for anybody that is online that's part of the committee. If you didn't hear your name mentioned, speak up now. I'll give you like 3 seconds. But it sounds like we've got everybody accounted for that's here, and I think that's a quorum, right, Sarah?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we're gonna.
It's Justin Willits. I'm here for Nicole McCleary. Just wanted to clarify.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, so welcome everyone. This is Jeff Sims with the Environmental Protection Commission here for our September 28th meeting of the Technical Advisory Committee. So I appreciate everybody stopping in today. It looks like we're going to have a pretty quick meeting, which is always nice because a lot of times these can be very detailed. So this will be a quicker one, I believe. So we'll start as we normally do with any comments from the public. So if there's any members of the public, I'm going to give you about 5 or 10 seconds to come online just to make sure you're accounted for. Okay, I don't think we have any. Just talking here, making sure if there's anyone from the public. You can also in the chat box, you can make a notation that you're here. Okay, with that, I'm going to assume that there are none. So we will move forward with the approval of the minutes from the August 17th meeting. That was part of your agenda packet. Does anybody have any comments or questions on the meeting notes? Okay, I did not have any myself. I was actually not at that meeting. I was out, but everything looked like it ran smoothly. So do we have a motion to accept the meetings?
So moved.
Okay, and let me remind everyone, please state your name when you make the motion or second.
It's Tony Garcia.
Thanks, Tony. Do we have a second?
Gina Evans, I'll second.
I'm sorry, who did the second?
Gina Evans.
Okay, thanks, Gina. Okay, with that, I will kind of do what I've done before. I'll assume everybody's in favor with an aye. If there's anybody opposed, please speak so now. Okay, well, that covers that. So we were going to move on, and one of our agenda items has been removed. So it's that's why I was saying this is going to be a streamlined meeting. So we do have one action item, and that is Johnny Wong with the reevaluation of transit asset management, pavement and bridge, and system performance targets. So with that, I will throw it over to you, Johnny.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Thanks for the introduction. Give me 1 sec to pull up my screen. Can you all see that?
I can, yes. It's
Yes.
not in presentation mode yet, but I can see it.
All right, I'm not going to put it in presentation mode lest my computer freak out. But regardless, thank you for having me, Johnny Wong, MPO staff. I'm here to provide you all with a status update for our performance on 3 federally required measures, which are transit asset condition, pavement and bridge condition, and system performance. All 3 of these measures originate from MAP 21 and FAST Act legislation, both of which emphasize performance-based planning and accountability, particularly related to transportation investments. These requirements are found in legislation which prescribes performance measures for DOTs and MPOs. We're required to establish performance targets and track our performance over time. We've brought these to you several times over the past few years. I understand that many of these may not be new to you, but we may have some new members, so I'm going to cover as much of this in a quick overview as I can. So beginning in 2016, we've been bringing you these performance updates and asking you to establish targets. Back in 2016 was the first time we did this. We brought these forward so that you could establish safety targets and track our progress pertaining to 5 specific performance measures of fatalities, serious injuries, fatality and injury rate, and bike and ped performance. Since 2016, when we began the safety target program, we've had to adopt or work into our program some additional measures that came forward. So beginning in 2018, we have been doing the same thing of providing you with a performance update and asking you to set targets for transit assets, pavement and bridge condition, and then system performance. So back in November of 2018, our MPO board adopted targets for each of these 3 measures. And since then, we've adopted them into our TIPS and LRTP so that we can reflect those updates and prioritize projects in the TIP that make progress toward achieving those performance targets. The targets that we set in 2018 last for 4 years. So in 22, they're going to expire. But the reason why we're presenting to you today is just to give you a little bit of a report card or like a midterm evaluation so that you can see how we're doing and allow this information to inform the decision to potentially set new targets in 22. So the first performance category that we're going to cover today is transit asset condition. TAM is an acronym that we should become familiar with. It stands for Transit Asset Management, and that should be thought of as a process which requires our transit agency to do several things. The first step in creating a transit asset management plan is for the agency to identify all assets that cost more than $50,000. Once they have that list of items, they create an inventory and place them into specific categories that are prescribed by the Federal Transit Administration. So once inventory is completed, the agency assesses condition using some specific criteria that are again established by the FTA. And then they use that info to create a business strategy so that they can fund maintenance of these assets at particular times so that they can get the most out of the asset. Truly what they're trying to do is just become more efficient so that they're not engaging in maintenance too early or not too late. A second acronym that's kind of important to understanding TAM is SGR, or State of Good Repair. State of good repair means that assets are performing their function, performing it safely, and the investment in the asset has been recovered. The TAM rule applies to all transit providers that are receiving FTA funding. There are 2 specific categories of transit providers. Tier 1 agency would include HART, and there's a long definition, but really what that means is they operate a pretty large inventory of passenger vehicles, and so they're subject to slightly different requirements than Tier 2 agencies, which are a little bit smaller. T-BARTA and the Sunshine Light would fit into a Tier 2 category. Tier 2 agencies are also required to produce a TAM plan, but they report directly to the state. They don't have to coordinate with the MPO. So the performance measures that we're going to be presenting you with today are just from HART. So to backtrack a little bit, the 4 categories that all of the assets have to be split into are rolling stock, which is more or less passenger vehicles, equipment, which could include construction, service vehicles, and other maintenance equipment, facilities, which is broken down into 2 subcategories, and infrastructure, which covers fixed guideway rail. Once they inventory those assets, they rate the condition, and again, they use that information to establish a process for optimizing the timing of maintenance activities. Once that is completed, the agency is then required to coordinate with us as well as DOT so that we can establish performance targets. And the way that the targets are measured is in the % of each asset category which is not in a state of good repair. So once again, the number we're looking at is the % of assets not in a state of good repair. What that means is we're looking for a lower number that indicates better performance. So in 2018, when HART produced its initial TAM plan and we adopted targets, the % of rolling stock assets that were not in a state of good repair was 28%. 2 years later to present day, that number has declined about 12% to 40.6. So that might seem like a little bit of a jump, and that is not an insignificant increase, but that is in line with industry standard. Because HART does not have a consistent revenue stream to replace buses on time, this number would jump around considerably. If HART were able to replace about 16 buses each year, that % of performance vehicles or passenger vehicles in a state of good repair would remain relatively consistent. But during times of economic boom, HART may be able to replace a number of vehicles and get ahead of the curve. But in times of bust, like we have seen their revenue decrease over the past few years, they're not necessarily able to purchase more than a handful of buses at one time. The second asset category that we need to cover is equipment. And when the targets were set in 2018, 19% of the equipment was not in a state of good repair. Fast forward to now, that number has increased by more than 13%. Again, a pretty significant jump, but not out of line with industry standard. Because these equipment vehicles have a much shorter vehicle life cycle, this number jumps around a little bit more than passenger vehicles because the vehicles that would be considered equipment have a lifespan of about 5 years. And so it makes it a little bit more difficult to consistently time replacements. The third asset category is facilities. Again, these are broken down into 2 subcategories. The first is passenger and parking facilities. When the targets were set, 10% were not in a state of good repair. HART has made a number of improvements to bring that number down to 0, where it currently stands. And the second subcategory is administrative and maintenance facilities. When the TAM plan was adopted for the first time in 2018, that % not in a state of good repair was 0. And as of today, that number is 28.6. But this is really indicative of the agency not covering the heavy maintenance facility when the plan was initially adopted. And so we already knew that there were a number of performance problems with the maintenance facility. They've suffered from flooding, roof leaks, and a number of other problems that once inventoried led that performance to decrease. And the final category is infrastructure. Back in 2018, when the target was set, it was 0%. As of today, it's also 0%. It's important to note that HART doesn't maintain the rail track. That's a City of Tampa asset. We reached out to the City of Tampa and they confirmed for us that 0% of the tracks are undergoing performance restrictions. So that's a good thing. The MPO, of course, is doing all that it can to help the agency maintain condition of its assets and improve. Thus far, we have prioritized about $4 million per year in grant funds over the past 5+ years for bus replacements. We've also helped the agency prioritize $10 million in grant funds to invest in upgrading its CAD ABL system, which is for vehicle tracking purposes. We've also prioritized $1 million for Marion Transit Center concrete improvements. Sorry, let me skip back a couple slides. I forgot to mention this 19% that you're seeing on the slide shown on the screen right now is the subject of our action today. While we're not able to adjust the targets for pavement and bridge condition, TAM, or system performance, this 19% needs to be adjusted because when we initially reported it back in 2018, there was an error. We actually reported it as 81%, and that needs to be corrected to 19. All right, so moving on. The second performance measure that we have to look at today is pavement and bridge condition. Under the pavement and bridge condition rule, DOTs and MPOs are required to establish targets for these assets that comprise the national highway system and report them in our TIPs and LRTPs. In 2018, our board agreed to support statewide targets, which are shown on the screen to the right. Back in 2018, when those targets were established, our interstate pavement in good condition was 50.9%. As of today, that percent has increased by nearly 10%, and by 2022, we're forecasting that it will exceed the target. The interstate pavement in poor condition has increased nominally from 0% to 0.3%. We don't foresee that this will be a problem in 2 years. It's far away from exceeding the target that was established. The non-interstate NHS pavement in 2018 was 42% in good condition. That number has decreased considerably, but we would consider that 36% to be within striking distance of achieving that target over the next 2 years. And we feel pretty confident about that because DOT has programmed some funds to maintain pavement condition on that system. Similarly to the interstate pavement, the non-interstate NHS pavement in poor condition has increased. Only nominally, it increased by 0.1%. Again, we don't foresee this to be a problem in the future. There's about 730 bridges in Hillsborough County. 462 of them are on the NHS system, and therefore they're subject to assessment under the rule. 76% of those bridges are in good condition or better. Our target is to have more than half in good condition, so we're far exceeding that target still. And the percent of bridges that are in poor condition remains at 0%. The third and final performance measure that we have to cover is system performance. The way that this metric is assessed is in terms of level of travel time reliability. That's not the most intuitive measure for folks, so I'd like to take a little bit of time to explain it and give a short primer before we cover what the performance has been over the past couple years. So the concept of travel time reliability is really moving us in the direction of getting away from LOS as a measure of congestion. We know that during the peak period, pretty much the entire national highway system running through Hillsborough County is suffering from significant jams. And so it doesn't really help us that much to know if it's terrible, slightly more terrible, or even a little bit worse. What we're trying to move into is the reliability of the network. And so that's really assessing how consistent is your time spent in traffic on a day-to-day basis. A good way to understand reliability is if you imagine that your commute to work takes on average 40 minutes of travel time. Let's say that on some days it takes about 35 minutes, on slightly more congested days it takes 45 minutes. There's only a 5-minute range plus or minus that 40-minute average. So we would consider that to be a pretty good amount of time spent in traffic, but still fairly consistent. That would be considered high reliability. Low reliability, on the other hand, is if you take that same 40-minute commute to work, and on some days it takes you only 20 minutes, but on others it takes 60 minutes. That would be that would be a commute that has very low reliability. And some of the factors that play into low reliability are the same factors that contribute to urban congestion overall, primarily bottlenecks, incidents like crashes, work zone hazards, inclement weather, natural hazards, special events, all of those things contribute to poor reliability. The way that reliability is measured is according to 3 prescribed metrics that FHWA has handed down to us. We're required to track and report reliability, level of travel time reliability on the interstate national highway system. The goal is to have your commute take no more than 50% additional time, 75% of the time. So if your commute is 40 minutes, we don't want that commute to be greater than 60 minutes, 75% of the time. That metric also applies to the non-interstate highway system, but our goal is to have no more than a 50% increase in time, 50% of the time. So 3 of the 6 days that you're traveling, it should be no more than a travel time of 1.5. And lastly, we also measure freight reliability. This is measured according to a slightly different scale. It's an indexed value. So the TTR, truck travel time reliability, should be no more than 2, which means that on the very worst days with the heaviest congestion, your trip time should not be doubled. Back in 2018, when the MPO board established these targets, our performance for level of travel time reliability on the interstates was 71%. 2 years later, we have increased that to 75%. On the non-interstate national highway system, our performance in 2018 was 59% reliability, and as of 2020, that number has been increased greater than 20% to now 81%. And the truck travel time reliability index score was 2.08. We have brought that number down, and so we're now exceeding the target. That number is 1.89. We're doing a lot to try to address reliability on our network. We're actually working with Hillsborough County staff now, which is in the process of updating its comp plan. There are a number of ways that reliability can be assessed, and there are a number of ways that it can also be addressed. So we brought forth presentations to you before on integrated corridor management, some of the technologies that exist, which if deployed on the network could help increase reliability. I just recently kicked off a smart cities mobility plan that's going to be doing, it's going to include an inventory and evaluation of all of the technologies that exist in this space to help increase reliability and knock down some of those travel times. So I look forward to bringing you an update on that smart cities plan in due time. The action for today is for you to approve a correction to those TAM targets. Once again, when we reported it back in 2018, it was incorrect. We reported it as 81%. That number needs to be changed to 19%. That's it for me. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, thanks, Johnny, for that. This is certainly a topic that I recall you've brought it in front of the committees and the board multiple times over the years, and I know we've talked about it, so I definitely appreciate getting the update. Before I make any comments, I guess I'll ask the committee, do you have any comments that you'd like to make at this time?
I have a question. I apologize. I couldn't find a button to raise a hand. This is Leland. Is there a button to raise your hand? I'm just curious. No.
You know, I don't see one. I think we normally would just use the chat box and just mention I have a question, but in either case, you're good to go right now. So go ahead with your comment.
Okay, thank you. No, I had a question, Johnny, regarding not specifically the correction, but the performance measures for bridge and pavement. So what would be how is this going to be used, or how would it be used? Say we're not meeting the target. We are meeting the target versus we aren't meeting the target. Then what? Like what would the outcome be, or the response or action?
At this particular moment, it's a little bit of a cerebral question because we're so close to meeting the targets. I think that it's possible that if we fell far behind the curve and we saw our pavement continuing to degrade over a number of years, we would have the ability to go to District 7 and say, you all committed to funding pavement improvements. We haven't been meeting the target for a number of years. We would like to meet that target, so let's maybe redirect some funds so that we can bring that up to condition. Once again, it's a little bit inconsequential because DOT has done a really good job of maintaining its pavement over the years. In the past, we've been rated very highly. I think we won an award from the Freight Association for having the best interstates in the country. As far as what that process would look like for interacting with DOT and asking them to redirect some more funds, I can't say for sure. It may begin with a board action, but again, I'm getting a little bit out of my wheelhouse speaking to that.
Okay, well, that makes sense. I mean, and then the MPO plays a role in prioritizing, to some extent, certain funding, federal funding through the DOT, through the DOT transportation system, right? But so that's where I'm curious about the setting goals for the non-DOT roads, so like city and county roads. Because I noticed that we set targets for those as well, unless I might be misinterpreting it. If we set targets for the non-interstate, does that include cities and county?
Those are still NHS roads.
Okay, but so it's only NHS roads that might be a city or county road would be the targets apply to.
Right. Being county staff, the county is not subject to the same standards. We have worked with you all to establish different performance goals. They're not necessarily enshrined as a target, but we worked with you in preparation for creating our pavement needs assessment, and you all told us that you want to maintain a specific PCI, pavement condition index number. I don't remember offhand what that was, but I remember that it was pretty aggressive. And so you all have told us that you'd like to have a pavement maintenance schedule on the order of something like 15 years, which is pretty aggressive. We take that information and we help secure funds so that you can meet that goal.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, John.
Okay, thanks, Leland. Do we have comments from any other committee members? Okay, I just have a few just from having done this in the past. And my number one was really in line with what Leland was saying is, I guess the real common question, what are we going to do with the numbers? We've identified these things, and I think you covered it pretty well in the presentation, and then going forward, what it's going to be. I guess initially, this is kind of the mid-year report card. Do you anticipate making any changes or suggestions right now based on the mid-year one and some of the numbers that we maybe aren't meeting?
It's difficult to say how the COVID restrictions will impact performance moving forward. This data was taken from 2018 through the end of 2019, and so it's not covering anything that happened in 2020. What happened as far as system performance over the past year is a huge question mark. But what we can do, or what I would suggest with the data that's in front of me now, is recommending not to adjust the targets because we're chugging along fairly consistently. For the targets that we're not yet meeting, we're still in striking distance of achieving over the next 2 years. Granted, anything could happen. But with the data that we have presently, I think the targets are still achievable. It's up to the board whether or not they want to get more aggressive, but that's a difficult call considering what's going on with statewide revenues. Okay.
And actually, you touched on one of my questions was going to be COVID and like whether this number encompassed, especially the March through June in particular, because the reliability probably would have shot through the roof and performance. So I wasn't accounting, that wasn't part of this, so that's nothing we need to worry about, I guess, at this point. Okay, and I want to thank you for color coding it as far as your increases and decreases in green and red and yellow. It made it a little bit easier to follow in the at least in the agenda report. And I think we even commented as a committee on the requested change you need to make that I think we had talked about that one being seemingly high. So I certainly in agreement with as far as the recommendation for the action item at the end of this, that it needs to be a tighter number. And some of these, you know, I guess it worries me a little bit when you talk about the ones that have drifted up, you know, the ones from Hart, you know, that is more uncomfortable looking from a metric standpoint. You know, you're halfway through and those are going up. Now, I appreciate your explanation as far as at least reasoning as to why they changed. So I'll leave it at that. But certainly, and you know this better than anybody, you know, we pull all these numbers, we need to evaluate it and look at them, and it sounds like you're doing it. I guess my only other question, and this isn't really a question, it's just kind of a comment. If you can go to slide 30, and I'm sorry, slide 13. And I could have probably picked up any one of these, but you know, again, I'm not a transportation expert, but you know, you hear a lot about the bridges in America failing and so forth. So I was really glad to hear, you know, 0% are in poor condition under the NHS bridges. And it's really good that 76.4 are in good condition. But that led me to believe that there's, you know, roughly 23% in what I would call fair, which I would worry is how close are those drifting to poor? So I guess my question would be, are we looking at that 23% and saying, you know, maybe we need to target those as part of our LRTP going forward? Just kind of, like I said, I could have picked other ones to ask that same question. That's just the one that I happened to select.
Bridges that are not maintained, well, let me take a step back. All bridges should have a repair schedule that prioritizes them, because you don't want to wait until it's too late to repair a bridge. Obviously, we have a lot of, you know, we suffer from the potential to have a natural disaster every summer and into the fall. Poor condition doesn't necessarily mean that it is unsafe. So the primary reason why a bridge would be considered poor is that it's just functionally obsolete. It's not able to service the volumes that it's seeing. So well before we get to a point where safety is in question, that bridge should be addressed. Having said that, we're very aware that bridge funding is not where it needs to be. When we reported this in the LRTP, there's more than $100 million worth of funds needed to bring all our bridges into good condition. So that's something that we should all be mindful of when we're programming projects in the TIP.
Okay, I am in agreement, and I appreciate that you guys are looking out for it. So I'll ask one other time, is there any more questions from the committee?
Jeff, I have one question.
Okay,
Question I have
Bob?
is, yes, Bob. Question I have is on the travel time reliability. It seems like the metric is based on the deviation from the whatever the deemed trip length is. Do we have a metric to improve travel times?
Sorry, Jeff, Bob, I didn't hear that last part.
Sorry. Okay, I said it looks like, from what I can tell, that the metric for the travel time reliability is based on the deviation from the standard trip length time. My question is, do we have a metric to improve travel times in the region?
We have a number of metrics that we could use to track that. We have at our disposal, we could measure delay, we could measure user cost delay. Some of those may give us a better indication of how long people are sitting in traffic without respect to the mean being just terrible. So this number that you're seeing on the screen of 1.5, these were prescribed to us by FHWA. If we as a community said that 1.5 is not good enough and we wanted to bring that down, we could, but there's no way we would ever meet that target. Anyone who's driven on 275 in the afternoon knows that, you know, you're going to be sitting in traffic for a very long time. I think FHWA understands this and just said that people are going to have to deal with it. Sorry to say that so ineloquently, but that's my take on the methodology.
Yeah, my view, the reason I bring it up is showing what the deviation is leads me to the next step of the ones that aren't good. How do we make better? And the other thing too is it helps Using these performance metrics that are approved and adopted helps when we have future projects to show that these projects will, make these are answering these performance metrics. So that's just where I was looking at it from there. But
Yeah.
thank you. I appreciate your explanation.
Yeah, you're right. So these metrics have already fed into a number of projects in the TIP. These metrics would help us prioritize things like signal retimings, new signals, any technology that could be deployed on the network. Ramp meters is something that we've discussed, you name it. And further along on the spectrum, we could get into capacity improvements, but I think that the goal of system performance is to improve using technology, or at least that's the spirit of it.
Well, I mean, I agree 100% with the technology, as you know, but also too, just keep in mind our limited access facilities in Tampa Bay. The Veterans was the last new limited access facility that was built. We have not. We're still with the same 4 limited access facilities. So if we're trying to improve travel times, we're trying to improve trips for South County and for East County. There are needs too on that without just continually widening, which I agree is not an answer to everything. But that's where it comes from. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, thanks for the comment, Bob. Any other ones from the committee? Okay, so we do have an action item, which I'm in agreement with. If you can pull it up there, Johnny, it's to recommend correcting the transit asset management equipment target from 81% to 19% that are not in good repair. So can I please have a motion to make such a change?
This is Leland. Dyke is so moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
Jay Collins for second.
Thank you, Jay. I will assume all are in favor with an aye. Are there any committee members that are opposed? Okay, with that, I believe we've completed that one. Johnny, thank you very much for the update.
All right, thank you all.
All right, so as mentioned, I believe our West Shore Boulevard Complete Street status report has been tabled for a future meeting. So the only other item on the agenda is the Vision Zero corridor studies with Lisa.
Yeah, Johnny, can you make Wade the presenter?
Yes, give me 1 sec to figure that out. All right.
Let me just adjust which screen it shows, excuse me.
I did see your PowerPoint, Wade.
Well, that'll have to work. All right, well, I'll go ahead and introduce this. So these are the Vision Zero. Oh, no. Excuse me, these are the Vision Zero corridor studies. Good, we can see that now. Just to introduce this, these were funded by the Board of County Commissioners. Excuse me, there we go. Is that changing? Excellent. So these are 8 of the most dangerous corridors for all users in the county. We have focused in this case on low-cost engineering strategies for all 8 of these corridors. So I will continue on with them. First, we'll start with Mango Road. Mango has a number of users and a number of issues. The paint markings have become a little worn off. The shoulders, as you can see in the bottom left photo, have a lot of debris and erosion coming in, which is a problem we hear pretty frequently throughout the county in all jurisdictions. The percentage of crashes here are about 10% bicycle and pedestrian crashes. As I pointed out before, some of those facilities are a little bit lacking. You can see in the photo on the right, some of the condition of the sidewalk and shoulder in those areas. And then moving on to the public outreach, we've done a little bit of, well, we've done surveys for each one of these corridors. This is just one screen. We're using MetroQuest for this one, asking for ideas for projects, safety concerns, and anything else people might want to mention about any of these corridors. Going on to 15th Street, this has the highest level of bicycle and pedestrian crashes of any of these 8 corridors. The county is currently doing a lot of work out there to fill some gaps in the sidewalks, install rapid flashing beacons and mid-block crossings, and really just looking at where some of those crashes are and what can be improved. This next slide shows the bicycle and pedestrian crashes. And then the map in the middle shows, the transit stops. This is also the highest corridor for ADA transit that HART serves. So it is a very big concern, and some of these interim or these very short-term improvements that the county is putting in should go a long way to helping with that. Just moving on to the survey for that one, I liked what they were able to do with this one, showing we talked a lot about what language to use, and we settled on using pictures as much as we could. So asking about some of these different facility types, and in addition, walking and traffic calming improvements. Next, moving on to Gibsonton Drive. This is a pretty high-speed multi-lane corridor. You can see in that first picture on the left, that's the exit ramp from I-75 northbound onto eastbound Gibsonton. Every time I've been out there, even though the bicycle and pedestrian crashes are not a great number here, there hasn't been a time I've been out there without somebody walking in the shoulder over I-75, probably to or from the Walmart, which is right there. As we move down into the crash data, only 1% of bicycle and pedestrian or crashes are bicycle and pedestrian. The majority of crashes here are in daylight conditions on dry roads, mostly rear end, left turn, and side swipes. So a lot of this is just happening due to speed and some misbehavior and congestion in this, it appears. But we are again going out and asking. We've gotten a number of comments on this corridor. I guess when you have that many crashes, it's something that people are very interested in. But I'm very excited to see we've gotten this much of a response. Next, continuing to 78th Street. The picture on the left is from a safety study that the county conducted looking at some improvements on this corridor a couple of years ago, and I just wanted to show those. That's a mid-block crossing and the top near the elementary school on the north end of the corridor. This corridor has a number of side streets that come in, and that creates a lot of left turn crashes being the predominant one here. So trying to make some of those turning conditions safer. And going into the comment I saw here, Brandy says that trying to turn onto 78th from these neighborhood side roads is unsafe. There is limited visibility to oncoming traffic, even on dry, sunny days. I imagine this is an issue all along the western side of the street. And I think that's probably a fair comment. So with that being said, I will go ahead and see if I can change the presenter to Lisa, and she will carry through the next 4 corridors.
Okay, thank you. All right. I accepted. What are you seeing? Are you seeing the PowerPoint or are you seeing my Outlook?
Lisa, we are seeing, well, now you're dragging the
okay.
web browser.
It's over.
Yes.
Okay. So it's interesting when you're not in charge, which one it's showing. Okay, so, oh, crud. All right. Okay, I have the next 4 corridors. We did the top 8 corridors, and Wade is managing 4 of them, and I'm managing the other 4. Watching his presentation a couple of times now, I see that we have lots of similarities and lots of different characters for our different corridors. Brisby Downs is the first one I'll highlight here. It's from Fowler to Bierce Avenue. This is one of the largest that I'm managing and highest speed. So we have 6 to 8 travel lanes, 50,000 vehicles per day. But what some of the good news is that the subconsultant that's analyzing this corridor is also working with the county and is aware of some city projects along the same corridor, and then just south of Fowler that is some city work. So we have 1,500 crashes in a 5-year time frame. The location, not surprisingly, is around Fowler and Fletcher and 131st. We have a 40 higher amount of biped crashes over the total crashes. 10 fatalities along here, so we're got some things to tackle. Part of the outreach for all 4 of these corridors is, well, actually all 8, is that we design flyers. We have the challenge of doing outreach during COVID-19 precautions. So this is the front and back of that flyer, and it does what we're doing right now, gives you the highlights of what the characteristics of the crashes in the corridor is looking like, that we sent out to people and then invited them to do the surveys, which we definitely want you guys to do the surveys. So then we have Fletcher Avenue, and this is not to be confused where we have the Fletcher Avenue complete street. This is farther to the west from Armenia to Nebraska, where we have the 4 lanes with the 2-lane turns in the center. We have people cutting across here in the middle. It's also 45 miles per hour. It does have some bike lane along it. The dominant crash type are the left turn and angle type. And we have over 900. And again, pretty even split here. We have quite a good percentage of biped crashes along Fletcher. Here's the Fletcher flyer, and we have a video highlighting the different characteristics of Fletcher at the same address that I posted in the chat that leads you to the surveys. So again, corridor highlights as part of the outreach, which we blasted significantly through our constant contact and through the Plan Hillsborough and MPO newsletters. So we're really, really trying to virtually get people to participate. Lynn Turner is in the top 8. It's had some improvements along in more recent years, some low cost engineering fixes, but still had some significant crash history. So we're taking a look to see what else can be done out there and see what's maybe not performing as well with that. Dominant one crash types, the angle and rear end crashes, a little lower types of crashes, still okay. And then we have a school out there, so we have an extra analysis to look and see how people are interacting getting to and from school. Here's again, same thing. We have drone footage and really good video explaining and introducing the project. And then near and dear and close to my personal home here is Sheldon Road. The portion that performed highest in our Vision Zero analysis is from Waters to Hillsborough Avenue. It's a 2-mile section. Shockingly, there are 27 intersections in that 2 miles and 24 HART bus stops. It's 5 lanes, has 45 miles per hour. It's got a trail crossing along it. Again, around 900 crashes in the 5-year period. We have fairly even split and a little high on the biped type of crashes. Here we have the failure to yield on the right turn as a problem, people following too closely and causing rear ending. A lot of aggressive driving was observed, and red light running. So, and speaking of red light running, during the timing of distributing the flyer to the community, just north of the extents of this study, at Linebaugh in Sheldon, there was a 3-person fatality on the Tuesday following Labor Day. And because this flyer was in all of my neighbors' newsletter, because I was like, oh, hey, there's this newsletter that lands in 5,600 of my neighbors' driveways on the 1st of each month. So the consultant and I scrambled to get an article in the World of West Chase. Here you see the cover. So we had an article in there, and then we designed this as the insert. So it was a loose insert that people could take out and use the QR code to launch right to our Planned Hillsborough VZ Corridors survey. And then the editor of the World of West Chase was kind enough to post an invitation to do it on the group Facebook, which has 8,000 members. But when the crash occurred, people that worked for 2 different news entities contacted us because they knew of this flyer. So the lucky occasion to do 2 interviews that day. So what I can say is that we're getting some response on our virtual surveys, but because of this extra attention and unfortunate timing, or it's very unfortunate we had 3 fatality crash with someone running the red light at Linebaugh, but we have over 400 responses on this corridor. Last I checked, but more like 17 and 9 on some of the other corridors. So I posted the link in the thing, and I will show you what it looks like here. Let's see. Let me go here, because it's also unfortunate that these videos don't play well over GoToWebinar no matter what we do. But here are the 8 surveys, and you can see here, Mango and 78th. So if you click here, it's the survey. If you click here, it's that fact sheet that were embedded into the PowerPoints. And then Fletcher and Lynn Turner have a video. So again, very nice video. Here we've embedded the Sheldon one. I'm just going to play a few snippets again because it doesn't transfer very well, but you'll get to see we have an explanation of Vision Zero and a lot of history and the data behind the corridor. But I'm hearing the great, awesome motivational music, and you're not. So I won't put you through any more of that. But that we have a lot of that's explaining how we're focusing on the low-cost engineering, and then some links to all of the other Vision Zero work that we're doing. So this is where we're at in the process now, as we're seeking the public feedback. We're going to continue it at least through September 30th, this Wednesday. So you guys are asked to get on there promptly and comment on any of the 8 corridors that you have familiarity with. Then we're going to take the responses and look at them, and we're looking at that with the recommendations that the consultants are proposing for the corridor and adjusting that. Our next step is we are scheduling meetings with our client, Hillsborough County Public Works, to go over those recommendations. And then what we'll do is be bringing all of these back to you. Hopefully it'll be time to work for the November committee meetings and December board for action to endorse the recommendations of the Vision Zero safety studies. And that completes the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Appreciate all that information. And I noticed that you posted the link in the chat box.
Yes.
For the survey, so that's probably the easiest for all members. I'd encourage you to take the surveys. If you click that box now, it'll open in your browser, and you can do it when this meeting is over, but you'll already have it up and ready to go. So with that, the survey covers a lot of areas we've talked about in the past. And I agree with you, some are downs and what Gibson has evolved into, because that's closer to me. And you found 50, which are a little bit more, I don't know the proper term for it, but not as much mass transit as it is neighborhood to neighborhood. And then I think it's just a lot more pedestrian centric in a lot of ways from people moving around. So a lot of different factors to consider. So it's not an easy job for you guys. So do we have any comments from the committee? Okay. I mean, for the most part, I would probably say I would encourage the committee to take the surveys, offer any input, and don't speak about corridors you don't know. Like, for example, I don't know a lot about Sheldon. That's on the far side of the county, but I can certainly comment on the ones that I am familiar with near USF or Gibsonton, the ones that I frequent. So any feedback you can provide is appreciated by MPO. From my side, it looks like you guys are taking strategies. There was a picture, I think it was on 15th Street, where there was near on the side of the road, there was a path that had obviously been worn through in the grass by pedestrians, consistently traveling. So those kind of items, if they can be evaluated more quickly, that's obviously an area where pedestrians would use a more defined paved walkway and maybe increase safety. Anything to kind of increase eyes on that obviously would be suggested, but I'm sure that's not telling you anything you don't know. But that's just an observation from me looking at some of the videos and pictures. So I guess beyond that, any other comments or questions from the committee? Okay, we appreciate the presentation from both of you, and that will end the scheduled activities for the TAC meeting. So do we have any old or new business that anybody would like to bring up? Okay, hearing silence, which is an oxymoron. Looks like the next meeting is on October 19th. So I will look forward to seeing everybody then. And with that, I think that we will be ending the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.